Olivia Carter, a determined and tenacious 35-year-old African-American FBI agent, lived in a world that constantly tested her resilience. Her profession required precision, courage, and unwavering commitment, but for Olivia, her work went far beyond solving crimes or protecting her community. Every day, she battled an additional layer of challenges: prejudice, skepticism, and the heavy burden of systemic discrimination. Despite her impeccable record and steadfast dedication to justice, the judgmental eyes of her colleagues and the unspoken barriers of her environment weighed heavily on her. On a cold and somber evening, Olivia navigated her car through the quiet outskirts of Kansas City. The streets were empty, with only the faint hum of her engine breaking the stillness. Overhead, streetlights cast a dim, amber glow, their beams flickering softly in the biting winter air. It had been a long, grueling day, another in a series of relentless workdays, and Olivia was exhausted. Yet, her mind refused to rest. She had spent the day chasing elusive leads, interrogating reluctant witnesses, and poring over every detail of a high-profile case that seemed to unravel further with each passing moment. Her body ached, but her spirit remained steadfast. Olivia had a mission, one that transcended solving crimes. She sought to challenge the very fabric of a system that so often faltered under the weight of its imperfections. As she drove, her thoughts drifted to the countless faces that fueled her determination. There were the victims she couldn't save, their memories haunting her, mingling with the hope of those still waiting for justice. Olivia's work wasn't just about enforcing laws. It was about being a force for change in a flawed and often unjust system. She had seen firsthand how prejudice could taint even the noblest intentions, turning the mechanisms of justice into instruments of oppression. Each case she tackled was a step forward in a fight that felt endless but essential. Lost in thought, Olivia was jolted back to reality by the sudden glare of red and blue lights flashing in her rearview mirror. Her heart skipped a beat, and a chill ran down her spine. Instinctively, she glanced at her speedometer. She wasn't speeding. Her car's registration and tags were current, and everything was in perfect order. There was no legitimate reason for her to be pulled over except for the one she dreaded most. Years of experience had taught Olivia to trust her instincts, and in this moment, they screamed for caution. Carefully, she guided her car to the side of the road. Her movements were deliberate, each action measured to avoid any misinterpretation. The blinding headlights of the police cruiser illuminated her car's interior, casting sharp shadows on the dashboard. Olivia turned off the ignition and placed her hands visibly on the steering wheel. Her breaths were steady, but her mind was sharp and alert. She knew the precariousness of the situation. Even the smallest gesture could be misread, escalating an already tense encounter. The sound of boots crunching against gravel reached her ears, growing louder as the officer approached. In her side mirror, Olivia caught sight of his imposing figure. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with a demeanor that radiated authority bordering on intimidation. His name tag read, Officer Cooper, a name that Olivia immediately recognized. Cooper had a reputation not for his dedication to justice, but for his aggressive and confrontational approach, particularly toward individuals who looked like Olivia. When he reached her window, Cooper leaned forward, his piercing eyes locking onto hers. "What are you doing out here at this hour?" he demanded, his tone dripping with suspicion and a barely veiled disdain. The question felt less like an inquiry and more like an accusation. Olivia raised her chin slightly, meeting his gaze with calm resolve. "Driving home from work," she replied evenly, her voice steady despite the tension hanging thick in the air. Her FBI badge rested on the dashboard, a silent testament to her authority. Cooper's eyes flicked to the badge, and his lips curled into a faint, mocking smirk. "FBI, huh? You don't look like an FBI agent," he remarked, his tone laced with condescension. Olivia held back the sharp retort that rose to her lips. She had encountered this kind of behavior before, demeaning, challenging, designed to undermine her authority and provoke a reaction. But Olivia knew better than to give in to such tactics. Instead, she maintained her composure. "Is there a reason you pulled me over, officer?" she asked, her tone measured but firm, carrying an undercurrent of steel. Cooper's smirk deepened as he took a step back, scanning her car with a mocking air. "Just making sure everything's in order," he replied, his voice oozing condescension. His gaze lingered on her a moment longer before he straightened up. "You have a good night now, Agent Carter," he added, the title sounding more like a taunt than a mark of respect. The interaction ended without further incident, but it left Olivia unsettled. She exhaled slowly, her grip on the steering wheel loosening as she watched Cooper return to his cruiser. Encounters like this were not new to her, but they never became easier. They were reminders of the systemic challenges she faced daily, even as a federal agent. Still, Olivia refused to let such moments deter her. If anything, they strengthened her resolve. As she pulled back onto the road, her focus shifted once more to her case. The web of corruption she was unraveling was more intricate and far-reaching than she had initially realized. Each thread she pulled revealed new layers of deceit and manipulation, implicating individuals in positions of power who had long evaded accountability. Olivia knew the risks of pursuing such a case, but she also knew that the stakes were too high to back down. The drive home felt longer than usual, the weight of the evening pressing down on her. When she finally parked in her driveway, Olivia sat in her car for a moment, staring at the dimly lit front porch. She thought about the path she had chosen and the battles she had fought to get here. It was a lonely road, fraught with challenges that often seemed insurmountable. But Olivia also knew that her work mattered. For every victim who had been silenced, for every community that had been overlooked, she was determined to be a voice of justice. As she stepped out of her car, the cold night air wrapped around her, a stark reminder of the world she was fighting to change. Olivia Carter was many things: an FBI agent, a fighter, a symbol of resilience. But above all, she was a woman who refused to give up, no matter how steep the odds. This wasn't just her job, it was her calling, her purpose, and she would see it through, one case at a time. A week later, Olivia found herself stepping into a deteriorating detention facility on the city's outskirts. The building was a testament to years of neglect, its crumbling walls and flickering fluorescent lights casting eerie shadows on the damp floor. The stench of mildew and decay hung heavy in the air, a constant reminder of the facility's grim reality. This was not a place meant for justice. It was a hub of corruption and control, a prison for those who dared to challenge the wrong people. Inside, Olivia's status as an FBI agent meant nothing. She was no longer Agent Carter, a respected federal officer. Here, she was just another prisoner, stripped of her authority and dignity. Her arrest had been orchestrated by Officer Cooper, the same officer who had pulled her over just days before. It had been clear from their initial interaction that Cooper was no ordinary cop. His demeanor, his disdain, and his thinly veiled hostility had been more than just an isolated display of arrogance. He was a key figure in a sprawling network of corruption that reached deep into the city's power structures. And now, Olivia was at his mercy, or so he thought. From the moment she stepped through the facility's rusted gates, Olivia knew she was walking into the lion's den. The guards, handpicked by Cooper, seemed to revel in their power. Their sneering comments and mocking laughter echoed through the halls, each one designed to chip away at her resolve. "FBI, huh? Doesn't look like it helped you much," one guard jeered as she was led to her cell. Another smirked. "Bet you wish you'd stayed in your fancy office now, don't you?" But Olivia was no stranger to adversity. She had faced prejudice and hostility her entire career, and she wasn't about to let a group of corrupt guards break her spirit. Instead, she remained calm, her expression unyielding. She knew that survival here would require more than just endurance. It would require strategy. Olivia began observing everything around her: the layout of the facility, the routines of the guards, the dynamics among the staff. Every detail was a potential piece of the puzzle she was determined to solve. Her chance came in the form of a young guard named Andrew Miller. Fresh out of training, Miller was an anomaly in the detention facility. Unlike his colleagues, who exuded arrogance and cruelty, Miller carried himself with a quiet unease. His uniform was neatly pressed, his demeanor respectful but hesitant. It was clear to Olivia that he didn't belong in a place like this. Over time, she began to notice the subtle ways he distanced himself from the others. He avoided their crude jokes, his disapproval evident in his silence. He carried out his duties with a professionalism that set him apart, even as he struggled to reconcile his role within the facility. Olivia saw an opportunity in Miller. During the rare moments when he was assigned to her cell, she engaged him in quiet conversations. She spoke with measured sincerity, planting seeds of doubt in his mind about the facility's practices. "You don't seem like the others," she observed one evening, her tone calm but probing. "Why are you here?" Miller hesitated, his eyes darting to the security camera in the corner. "I needed a job," he admitted, his voice low, and it seemed stable. Olivia nodded, her gaze steady. "Stable isn't the same as right," she said softly. "You've seen what goes on here. You know it isn't right." Miller's expression faltered, a flicker of guilt crossing his face. But he said nothing more, and Olivia didn't press him. She knew trust was a fragile thing, especially in a place like this. It would take time to break through the walls he had built around himself. That time came sooner than Olivia expected. Late one night, as the facility settled into an uneasy silence, Miller approached her cell. His footsteps were hesitant, his demeanor anxious. When he reached her, he glanced over his shoulder before slipping a small, outdated phone through the bars. "Use this to contact someone you trust," he whispered, his voice trembling. Olivia stared at the phone, her surprise evident. "Thank you," she said, her tone heavy with sincerity. "But be careful. If they suspect you're helping me, it won't end well." Miller nodded, his face pale. "I'll be careful," he assured her. "But this isn't right. None of it is." With the phone in hand, Olivia contacted Agent Marcus Hernandez, a trusted colleague from the FBI. Her message was brief but urgent. She detailed her situation and the corruption she had uncovered, urging Marcus to act quickly. She knew that time was of the essence. Every moment she spent in the facility was a risk. Meanwhile, Miller became an invaluable ally. He provided her with critical information about the facility's inner workings, the guard schedules, Cooper's movements, the locations of surveillance blind spots. With his help, Olivia began to piece together a plan. Days turned into nights, and Olivia's resolve only grew stronger. She used her time in the cell to strategize, mentally mapping out every detail Miller shared. She also observed the guards, noting their patterns and behaviors. Cooper's arrogance worked to her advantage. He often visited the facility, confident in his untouchable status. During these visits, Olivia paid close attention, catching snippets of his conversations and memorizing any details that could be useful. The breaking point came when Miller shared a crucial piece of information. Cooper was planning a late-night meeting in the facility's main office. "It's where he keeps all his files," Miller revealed, his voice barely above a whisper. "If you can get in there, you might find what you need." Olivia nodded, her mind racing. "We'll need a distraction," she said. Together, they devised a plan. Miller would create a disturbance in another wing of the facility, drawing the guards away from the office. Meanwhile, Olivia would use the opportunity to access Cooper's files. The night of the plan, tension hung thick in the air. Miller's nerves were evident, but he carried out his role with precision. As the guards rushed to respond to the commotion he created, Olivia made her move. Slipping out of her cell with a key Miller had provided, she navigated the dimly lit hallways with practiced stealth. When she reached the main office, her heart pounded in her chest. Inside, the office was cluttered with papers and files, a chaotic testament to Cooper's overconfidence. Olivia worked quickly, her trained eyes scanning for anything of importance. She found bank statements, records of secret meetings, and lists of names that included high-ranking officials and influential figures. Each document was a piece of the puzzle, evidence of the corruption that permeated the system. Using the phone Miller had given her, she photographed everything, ensuring she had a record of every incriminating detail. Just as she was finishing, Olivia heard footsteps approaching. Her pulse quickened, but she remained calm. Carefully, she returned the files to their original positions, erasing any sign of her presence. Then, she slipped out of the office and back to her cell, her movements swift and silent. By the time the guards returned to their posts, everything appeared as it had before. The next morning, Olivia contacted Marcus again, sending him the photos and a detailed message outlining her findings. "This is bigger than we thought," she wrote. "We need to act fast." Marcus's response was immediate. He assured her that a task force was being assembled and that help was on the way. In the days that followed, tension in the facility grew. Cooper's paranoia was evident, and the guards became more vigilant. But Olivia and Miller remained steadfast. They knew the risk they were taking, but they also knew what was at stake. For Olivia, this wasn't just about clearing her name. It was about exposing a system that had allowed corruption to thrive unchecked. For Miller, it was a chance to do what was right, to stand up against the injustice he had witnessed. When the FBI task force finally arrived, it was swift and decisive. Agents stormed the facility, arresting Cooper and his accomplices. Olivia's evidence proved invaluable, not only securing convictions but also uncovering the extent of the corruption. Miller's role was also recognized, his bravery acknowledged by those who had once doubted him. As Olivia stepped out of the facility, the sun shining down on her for the first time in days, she felt a sense of relief but also determination. This was just one battle in a much larger war. The fight for justice was far from over, but Olivia Carter was ready to continue it. With allies like Miller and Marcus by her side, she knew that together, they could make a difference one case at a time. The night of their escape was shrouded in tension and determination. Cooper, engrossed in a late-night meeting, was unaware of the storm brewing within his own facility. Andrew Miller, whose growing discomfort with the corruption around him had turned into quiet defiance, approached Olivia's cell with deliberate caution. The key in his hand trembled slightly as he unlocked the heavy door. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Olivia nodded, her resolve unshaken. "Let's do this." They moved quickly and quietly, navigating the dimly lit hallways of the detention facility. The air was heavy with the faint hum of fluorescent lights and the distant murmur of guards stationed at their posts. Miller led the way, his familiarity with the layout proving invaluable. Olivia, alert and methodical, followed closely behind, her mind racing with the gravity of their mission. Every step was calculated. Every sound heightened their awareness of the risks they were taking. Their destination was Cooper's office, a space Miller had described as chaotic but crucial. It was here, he explained, that Cooper kept files implicating high-ranking officials, corporate executives, and law enforcement officers in an expansive web of corruption. Olivia knew the significance of what they were about to uncover. This wasn't just about exposing Cooper. It was about dismantling an entire network that thrived on greed and exploitation. When they reached the office, Miller hesitated for a moment before opening the door. The room was cluttered with papers, folders, and hastily scrawled notes. It was a mess, but Olivia's trained eyes quickly identified the key documents. As Miller stood watch near the door, Olivia got to work. Her photographic memory was her greatest asset in moments like these. She scanned each document, committing names, dates, and transactions to memory. There were bank statements showing illicit transfers, meeting records linking powerful figures to illegal operations, and handwritten notes that hinted at deeper layers of deception. As she worked, Olivia couldn't help but feel a mix of anger and determination. The audacity of these individuals to manipulate the system for their own gain, while countless others suffered, fueled her resolve. "This has to end," she thought, her movements precise and efficient. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. When Olivia had captured every crucial detail, she carefully returned the files to their original positions. "We can't leave any trace," she whispered to Miller. He nodded, his expression a mix of fear and resolve. The two slipped out of the office and retraced their steps back to Olivia's cell, their hearts pounding with the weight of what they had just accomplished. The next few days were a whirlwind of covert communication and strategic planning. Olivia used the outdated phone Miller had given her to contact Agent Marcus Hernandez, a trusted colleague at the FBI. She relayed the details of her findings, providing Marcus with enough information to launch a coordinated effort against Cooper's network. The evidence Olivia had gathered was irrefutable, a damning indictment of the corruption that had infiltrated the system. Marcus wasted no time. Within days, a task force was assembled, and a raid on the facility was meticulously planned. Olivia and Miller, though still under immense scrutiny, continued to operate cautiously, knowing that the slightest misstep could jeopardize everything. The night of the raid arrived, and with it, a sense of impending justice. FBI agents descended on the facility with precision and authority, their presence overwhelming the corrupt guards who had long operated with impunity. Cooper, caught off guard, tried to escape, but his attempts were futile. He was arrested along with several of his accomplices, their web of deceit unraveling in real time. Olivia's role in the operation was recognized immediately. Her resilience, intelligence, and unwavering commitment to justice had been the cornerstone of the raid's success. Miller's bravery, too, did not go unnoticed. His decision to stand against the corruption he had been complicit in marked a turning point not only for himself but for the system he sought to reform. As the facility's gates closed behind her, Olivia stepped into the crisp night air. The Kansas City skyline stretched out before her, its lights a beacon of hope and possibility. For a moment, she stood in silence, reflecting on the journey that had brought her here. The fight was far from over, she knew that. The network she had helped expose was vast, and there were still countless battles to be fought. But this victory, however small in the grand scheme, was a reminder that change was possible. This isn't just about me, Olivia thought as she looked out over the city. It's about every voice that's been silenced, every life that's been touched by injustice. This is my calling, and I'm not done yet. Marcus approached her, his expression a mix of admiration and determination. You did it, Olivia, he said, his voice steady. We've got enough to take this all the way. Olivia turned to him, a faint smile on her lips. We did it, she corrected, and we're just getting started. The two stood side by side, the weight of their accomplishments settling over them. For Olivia, this was more than a victory. It was a testament to the power of integrity and perseverance. She knew the road ahead would be long and fraught with challenges, but she was ready. With allies like Marcus and Miller by her side, she felt an unshakable sense of purpose. Under the Kansas City skyline, Olivia Carter reaffirmed her commitment to justice. This was her mission, her fight, her reason for enduring the hardships that came with her profession. And as she walked away from the facility, her head held high, she carried with her the belief that even in the darkest moments, light could prevail.